Welcome to Obi-Wan Studios, and for today's LEGO Star Wars set review, I am super excited to have the 75191 Jedi Starfighter with Hyperdrive. This is one of two sets that LEGO has made with a Hyperdrive Ring for a version of the Jedi Starfighter, and you guys can bet that I'm going to be doing a comparison video between both of these Hyperdrive Ring sets, so make sure you are subscribed to my YouTube channel if you want to support my videos and see when that comparison comes out. But this Jedi Starfighter with Hyperdrive released in the summer of 2017 for $100, and it retired at the end of 2018. Today, if you're looking to pick one of these up sealed, just like my example, you can expect to pay about $380 based on sales data from Brick Economy. This set contains 825 pieces and comes with 4 total minifigs. We have R4P17, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Boba Fett, and Jango Fett. Now, both Boba and Jango Fett are exclusive to this set, and then the Obi-Wan minifig did release as part of the European exclusive foil pack, so still pretty exclusive to this set, but a really fantastic selection of minifigs overall out of this set. As for the box art for this set, I think it looks so awesome. You have the Jedi Starfighter coming out of hyperspace on the front. It looks really great. And then on the back of the box, you actually see Obi-Wan and Jango Fett dueling on Kamino on the landing platform, but on the one that contains Obi-Wan's Starfighter. So just an interesting change up from the movie that you see, along with the set's play features highlighted. I am just very excited to get this set and complete the 2 sets that are part of the Hyperdrive Ring collection. With the set unsealed, we have 6 numbered bags along with a 7th unnumbered bag that contains a lot of the larger turbine pieces for the Hyperdrive engines, and then the instructions manual and sticker sheet were all together in a separate plastic bag, which just helped to keep everything nice and protected. Opening them up to give you a better look at both that instructions manual with the same great box art on it, and then a sticker sheet which has a bit more stickers than I actually expected out of this set. But now it's time to build this Hyperdrive Ring, and I'll get back to you guys once the set is all complete. Alright, I've got this incredible set all built, but let's take a closer look at the minifigs before we get into the build, starting off with R4P17, and this is just a great looking astromech droid. I'm a big fan of the dark red and white color scheme for R4. The printing on the headpiece for the droid looks fantastic. It goes all the way around with no gaps, which looks really good, and then there is a nice torso print on the front of the droid as well. But the one thing I just wish LEGO would do is give back printing for all astromech droids. In modern days, we have just back printing for R2, but a back print for a droid like R4 would go a long way into making it look absolutely perfect. Next is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the Episode 2 version of his character has always been my favorite from my childhood, at least because Episode 2 is the earliest Star Wars movie that I remember seeing in theaters. The hairpiece looks fantastic, and both face prints as well I'm a big fan of, especially the gold comms link that's printed on there. The one thing that personally I think would have been cool is that if LEGO only printed that comms link on one of the face prints, then that way the second face print made a little bit more sense if he was dueling Jango Fett and not in the Starfighter, but both face prints do look really great, as well as the printing for the Jedi robes. You have a nice torso, waist, and even a slight leg print as well to add in a little bit of extra detail, and a good looking back print too. Obi-Wan also comes with his blue lightsaber as you would expect, and this is just a pretty fantastic Episode 2 version of him. Alright, our next minifig is Boba Fett, and this might be a tad controversial, but I don't think this minifig does a great job of representing what Boba actually looks like in Attack of the Clones. The hairpiece, I think, does really work, but what doesn't to me is the use of light nougat for his skin tone. He doesn't have the same skin tone as Obi-Wan, but he does in the minifig form, and the exact same thing can be said about Jango Fett. It doesn't accurately represent what the characters look like, and to me, it makes them look less like their characters when I just look at these minifigs. I don't totally see Boba Fett out of this one. The other detail that I'm not the biggest fan of is his color scheme for the outfit. Now, on its own, the contrast of the dark blue for the sleeves and the lighter blue for the torso and legs does look very sharp. However, the blue of Boba's sleeves is supposed to match the blue that's underneath Jango's armor, and here, it clearly doesn't, and it looks a little funny to me when you have them side by side. Now, I am making this review in 2025 when we've had the Ultimate Collector Series version minifigs of both Boba and Jango Fett, and that issue was fixed, and there definitely is that almost recency bias for me when I see those minifigs, and I actually do like those adjustments to the skin tone, for example, and the outfit consistency as well. For the time in 2017, sure, it would have looked good, but I still think it's an inaccuracy that LEGO could have done a bit of a better job in making work between these two characters. Otherwise, the printing for Boba's outfit on the front and back looks good. The color black for his belt might not be the most accurate version either, so this Boba Fett does look good, but definitely not great in my opinion. And lastly, we have Jango Fett, and I think he looks pretty great, at least with the helmet on. The print for the helmet looks good, and then you have the rangefinder attachment, as you would expect. But when you take the helmet off, the first issue is actually that you don't have a hairpiece for him, so he would just be bald. So that's kind of weird. I wish LEGO would have included that in the set. It would have made a lot more sense. But then that face print to me doesn't even do that good of a job of just looking like Jango. That's just what I think, at least personally. And then the light nougat for the skin tone, like I already mentioned, just doesn't do the best job of representing his character as well. But at least with his helmet on, he does look way better, and I think the printing for his armor was done very well on the front, especially the leg print, adding in a lot of detail, and then the print that exists underneath his jetpack piece as well on his back. Lastly, Jango comes with his 2 blaster pistols, as you would expect for his accessories. Overall, for a single set based on Attack of the Clones, these 4 minifigs are the ones you'd want out of a set like this. However, there was a huge missed opportunity, in my opinion, on LEGO's end to make a playscale version of the Slave One to go along with this set back then that would include both Jango and Boba Fett. And then in this one, give us Dex. That would have been so cool to have gotten him finally, and it would have made a ton of sense to include Dex in this set to go along with Obi-Wan as he's taken his Starfighter to go and find Kamino. That would have been truly awesome, but for what we've got, still pretty great. Okay, so that brings us along now to the builds for the set, and really we have 2 separate builds that just work really great together. We have Obi-Wan's Jedi Starfighter, and then we also have that Hyperdrive Ring. So let's take a closer look at the Jedi Starfighter first, and then we'll move on to the Hyperdrive Ring. I've always loved Obi-Wan's Jedi Starfighter from Attack of the Clones, and the original LEGO Star Wars version of that ship was my favorite set growing up when I was a kid, so I always am super excited to have a new version of this Jedi Starfighter to experience in LEGO form at least. This one I think is a really fantastic looking version of that Jedi Starfighter. There are a lot of stickers throughout the build, but they do add a ton of detail. One kind of quirk though is that the color matching of the white of the sticker to the white of the brick isn't the best. You definitely do notice the lines of where the sticker ends and the brick actually begins. So not the best in terms of the quality, but the rest of their design does add a lot of detail that you'd want for this Jedi Starfighter, especially on the sides just by the cockpit. The bright green looks great. However, those pieces I think especially should have been printed so that there isn't an issue in terms of trying to line them up absolutely perfectly. Printed pieces there just would have gone a long way, especially a printed Republic logo on the right wing, which is a sticker. And the fact that LEGO used to make these pieces printed way back in the day, like on the original Obi-Wan's Jedi Starfighter set, it was printed. The fact that now they're stickers like on this set is just super annoying. It's a piece that LEGO should just always print. They'd use it in so many sets. And where the Republic logo is on the right wing, on the left side we have a turntable for R4's headpiece to go on, and then of course you can rotate him around. Now you can't place his entire astromech droid body inside of the Jedi Starfighter, but there is storage for him right before the cockpit. You simply lift these pieces up and then his legs and body can go inside and be stored and not get lost during play. So that is a nice feature for sure. The way the wings are attached to the main body of the Jedi Starfighter also creates some gaps when you get them at the proper angle. It's not the worst I've ever seen on a Jedi Starfighter, but it's something that maybe the designers could have cleaned up just a little bit more to make it a tiny bit less noticeable. As for the Jedi Starfighter's weapons, where the main laser cannons would be, we have stud shooters, one on each side, and they work totally fine and don't look that bad for display, in my personal opinion. A lot better than flickfire missiles at least. Now, one common issue that LEGO has with these Delta 7 Jedi Starfighters is the sloping up towards the cockpit, and this Jedi Starfighter is no exception. It's not the best look in terms of how where you store R4's body, it does slope up quite aggressively towards the cockpit and just doesn't look quite as natural like you see in the movie, like it should be designed. So I wish LEGO for this version at least could have done something a little bit better to make it just a bit of a nicer gradient. In terms of the cockpit itself though, I think it does look really great. I love the windshield piece that they use, especially the bit of a dark tint to it. You can open it up, it just simply lifts up from the hatch on the front, and then you have just a pretty basic cockpit for Obi-Wan to fit inside. You have some brown pieces built in for his chair, and then you have a nice printed control panel also, and he looks pretty great inside of that cockpit. And then the fin at the back as well, the stabilizer fin is brick built in and looks pretty great too. Underneath the wings on each side, there is a clip where you can store Obi-Wan's lightsaber while he is piloting the Starfighter. And then in terms of landing gear, in the kind of front midsection underneath, we have one retractable piece of landing gear. And then just underneath the cockpit, it is brick built in so that the Starfighter will rest on this back rear section. It makes it a little bit more sturdy than just a skinnier piece of landing gear on the back. So for a 2-point connection system for that landing gear, the Starfighter does feel pretty stable on a hard surface when landed. And lastly, when it comes to the engine's design, I just think they look really great. They utilize the more old school Jedi Starfighter gray engine piece, but then there's the 2x2 circular brick on the ends of them with the inverted yellow plate for the thrust. Just helps to modernize how that looks, and I think it works really well here. In general, I just am a big fan of this Jedi Starfighter build, and I think it's a really good representation of what Obi-Wan's Jedi Starfighter looks like from the movie. And now we can turn to the Hyperdrive Ring, which certainly is something that is difficult to get across in LEGO form to translate just because it is a ring. But I think the designers did a pretty great job in actually making the shape look great at this scale, especially now. It's largely thanks to this Technic spine that runs all the way around the inside of the build, but as you can see, it is totally exposed and it does look structural, it does look pretty like mechanical. It's still not the best look for display, which this is definitely intended to have a large display factor to it. So seeing like the exposed blue pins in the Technic just doesn't really work with the overall color scheme. So maybe some plates across the top side, or the inside rather, of the Hyperdrive Ring just would have helped it to look a lot better, but I can definitely sympathize with how difficult that would have been to do at the scale the build is in. Now, to keep the Hyperdrive Ring sturdy on a surface, especially with the heavy Jedi Starfighter docked, there is this larger plate that sticks out quite a bit at the bottom, but it's completely necessary just to keep the entire thing stable and really reduce the risk of it wanting to roll or fall over. Just above it, we have the system of Technic that's all done in clear pieces, and it's kind of dual purpose in that it adds some additional support to the actual docking station for the Jedi Starfighter, but it's also a handle in which you can pick up the entire Hyperdrive Ring and swoosh it around pretty comfortably, and of course the use of clear Technic pieces helps to just make it look a bit less noticeable than it otherwise would have. Now, to actually dock the Jedi Starfighter in here, this trigger system that you have with the handle, you simply push it back with the use of bands, and then the kind of Technic pin system will slide open, allowing you to dock the Jedi Starfighter there. And then the S-foil pieces that are used for the Jedi Interceptors, which kind of help to clamp the Jedi Starfighter down, you can simply just lower those onto each wing, and then the Jedi Starfighter is docked in the Hyperdrive Ring and ready to blast off into hyperspace. The one thing you will notice with this build though is that the Jedi Starfighter doesn't really dock inside of the Hyperdrive Ring, as it more sort of sits right on it. It's not accurate to in-universe for how it looks, but it just wouldn't have been possible to have really made it dock, I think, any other way than really resting its weight on top. So it was a necessary trade-off in order to actually make the system work as well as it does. And underneath where the Jedi Starfighter docks, there are spring-loaded shooters, and these are really easy to use just by the nature of which you hold the Hyperdrive Ring. You can just simply reach up and fire each of them off. It's a good system that doesn't stick out, and it's not really an eyesore, so I definitely appreciate the design being fairly well incorporated into the build. On the outside of the hyperdrive ring, we have the hyperdrive engines. On the main centerpiece, there is a large sticker on each side, which was definitely a bit of a pain to put on as well to get to line up properly, but this one adds a ton of detail to the engines, and without it, it would have looked very bare. The front of the engines with the intakes look great too due to these larger kind of wheel pieces. However, they are just free to spin around, and it's just something I personally don't like. I would have wished they would have been fixed so that they line up and all look like they're kind of set like they're supposed to be, instead of being very easy to knock and spin around and just not be aligned. I just don't like that. At the back of the engines, we have the thrust done in translucent yellow, which looks good and is one of the colors you see when the hyperdrive is kind of warming up. However, I think light blue just would have looked a lot cooler, like you're going into hyperspace like you see in Attack of the Clones. Now, one other thing that you might not totally notice, but I do really appreciate in terms of the hyperdrive ring's design, is the variance in the different plate pieces that make up the outside of the ring to help give it its more structured look and color scheme. Having just that variation with some stickers as well just adds in that detail and makes it not look super repetitive, which I really do appreciate. And just the general color scheme for this hyperdrive ring, I think was done pretty well to really do a pretty great job of accurately representing what Obi-Wan's hyperdrive ring looks like in Attack of the Clones. Now, there is one really clever design element for this build, and it's the fact that the docking platform, as I keep calling it at least, kind of rests on like a suspension system, especially with the Jedi Starfighter actually docked in the hyperdrive ring. There is a lot of weight in this middle section, and of course, the handle does help prop it up, but when you actually pick the set up, at the bottom here, just in front of the handle, are these brown Technic pins which allow there to be some movement, and then at the connection points right by the engines on either side, the Technic pieces actually have some movement there as well. So when I pick it up, there is actually just that little bit of movement, and it just feels a lot happier to actually be able to swoosh around and be used for play like it's intended. The entire hyperdrive ring just feels a lot less fragile because there is that little bit of extra movement with the connection points for that docking platform. And when I just go to set it down, you can just see that there is that tiny bit of movement that it has. There's not a ton of flex, but enough that it just actually, I think, really adds to the stability and overall design for the build. And it's just a little bit maybe of an underappreciated detail that they engineered for this hyperdrive ring set. I just personally am a really big fan of this set. I think it looks fantastic. It has amazing play features incorporated into the builds, and then it's just really cool to represent something that we really don't ever get in LEGO Star Wars. There's only ever been 2 hyperdrive rings that LEGO has ever made, and it's going to look so cool displayed next to the original behind me. I do see the arguments that some people I'm sure will make that the hyperdrive ring maybe isn't as accurate or as good looking as you would want, but in reality, I think the designers did a really good job in making the set look as good as it does. That's just at least my take on it. However, it does have one issue that I haven't really discussed yet, but now is the perfect time to do so, and it is that $100 price point for the retail originally when the set came out. If you found the set for $100 today, it would be an absolute no-brainer steal, but $100 at the time of release was definitely way too much money in my opinion for the set, because the 75214 Anakin's Jedi Starfighter released in the summer of 2018. So both of these sets were on the shelves at the same time. There was some overlap, and this set was $20. So you are telling me that the hyperdrive ring build and then Jango and Boba Fett was $80 of value? No, there's no way. So the set on the shelf was definitely overpriced. So that is just something to look back on and just remember, okay, sure, this was fantastic when it released to get the lineup of 4 great minifigs, a hyperdrive ring, 2 really great builds, but it was very overpriced at the time it came out. Like I said, $100 now would be an incredible steal. It's funny how those things work. So then that leaves us with the Obi-Wan Studios set rating, and this one is getting a 9 out of 10. I think that is pretty fair, all things considered, but let me know in the comments down below what you think of this set and what you would give it out of 10 as your own personal score. Thank you so much for watching my review on the 75191 Jedi Starfighter with hyperdrive. If you enjoyed the review, please leave a like, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, again, make sure you hit that subscribe button because that comparison video between both both of these Jedi Starfighters with Hyperdrive Ring sets is going to be coming out very soon, and I know you guys are going to want to see that video, so make sure you're subscribed. It helps support the channel as well. My name is Justin. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will see you on the next LEGO Star Wars review on Obi-Wan Studios.